Welcome everybody to Masterclass, YouTube Masterclass. This is a Coursera class that we teach once a week about. I'm Professor Dr. Sheley, and I'm Dr. Aaron Sheley, and you probably haven't heard of me at all, and that's okay. I'm not like famous or anything, but I'm teaching this class on Orson Welles, and the Orson Welles class has got us a lot into the film studies, and I know for the past 3 years it's been film studies, and we're thinking like, what don't we already know? And that's the funny part, is because we don't even scratch the surface on a lot of these ideas. The much we teach a class about it, we always fall back on the idea that the ideas are out there, so we can just lean on that. And then finally we're like, no, Orson Welles did really invent this. Historiography shows that this was a key for long takes, in Citizen Kane, or the multi-sided sets like in Citizen Kane. So you see what I'm looking at. You can't really tell what I'm looking at, but I'm looking at a filmography of all the films directed by Orson Welles, and this is what we're covering in the class, is his films. We don't totally go into his biography and what he went through and what all he did. We do know that he had a hard time getting movies directed, even being a pretty popular actor until later. Then he was a great actor and thought that way. But usually, in his case and others like him that were in the film world, it was pretty much after he was already accomplished that they all looked back and said, this was the accomplishment of cinema history. This was the accomplishment of it all. So we're looking at his first, this is 12th Night. Now, I've seen clips of this, and it's Shakespeare, and obviously from the Shakespeare Company. And the Shakespeare Company was one of the first to really give him a big breakout job. But this, notice, isn't as an actor, it's as a director. So we'll have to check later some other time to see when he started acting, because it looks like it's up here. But we're looking at the director list today, and then we'll look at the TV and things he acted in later. If we get to it today, that's great. So we'll get to it, though, and that's what I meant. And then 12th Night's really interesting because it's the one in Shakespeare that's about the coming of the King Arthur and the Round. And on the one hand, they're about to enter into this sort of Renaissance phase, and then 12th Night has more to do with, we've never heard of them, who are they, let's not let them in. And so this does kind of foible the theory that Shakespeare does write out of his own generation, because he had to look back to do 12th Night, and it's not like all of his plays were contemporary to him at the time. That Orson Welles is obviously making an abstract film isn't just noticeable by the cover. It's that the abstraction is the play itself. We take it as an abstraction, and then it becomes kind of this movement for this film about movement, and the next one we have seen, if we've dug up the avant-garde box, and it has a lot of different experimental animators and the avant-garde collection from Kino. And Kino Video is a really well done video program. It puts out only the cutting edge and the hard ones to find. And I want you to know that if you're not interested in any of this, you don't have to. But if you're a student in my class, you should at least acknowledge that these things, these items, these objective correlations we're making are not folly. They will help you in your understanding of Orson Welles if you've got an interest in it. I'm not trying to steer you wrong and say, find the Hearts of Age on Kino Video, and you will be confirmed as a true Orson Welles buff. Although that's true, you have to actually not know it exists until you get that disc. So, this also seems like we're at a top secret. That one of those top secrets is we cannot talk about certain things that are good in cinema. If we're cinema buffs, we usually don't, unless it's to other cinema buffs. And you're like, well, if I talk to it about someone that's not interested in cinema, it may cause a problem. I mean, not because it has anything offensive in it, but because it's experimental, there are things that always someone is not going to like. And that's not really the point, liking it or not. It's really the point, is it somehow reappropriation or appropriation of an art form, in the sense that cinema always is a recontextualization. And 12th Night shows that as kicking off his career, that 12th Night is there to say, look, we're appropriated, we're reference to. We're making references to the reference to, and it's them waiting to do the play about the guys waiting for the knights, and it seems like it would be not the right way to call it night, but it's night with an N. And this was Shakespeare's idea. And so you can see that Orson Welles was already going through the Shakespeare phase. And it gets him ready for Hearts of Age, where he dances like an animal and flies over a building and gets shot out of a cannon. You have to do that in an avant-garde film. He messes with an animal that's coming at him, but it's all the dude in a suit with the animal, And it's like a music video. It would be like a strange music video, like an independent music video that would be like avant-garde. And there have been those in MTV history, that there are MTV videos that are just experimental. They used to do Liquid Television, for instance. And Liquid Television is all experimental TV until it becomes right. So, and it made people mad at first because, like, they didn't understand that it was all the animation. They didn't understand that motive of animation for kind of like rolling animation forever. And it's not like to make it tedious, although they're not really concerned if it seems tedious on the screen, because it was very difficult for them to put it together. So they're not so worried about like everybody's quotes on timing or where the object goes. And that really set Orson Welles free from this whole idea that he had to run things like the exact way as a studio film, but then that he's an independent coming up in the world, and that he hasn't made really his mark. He makes 12th Night. Hearts of Age ends up being big in French circles. Like in French circles, they're all saying, and when a movie is justified overseas, then in a few years it'll boomerang back to America, and then we'll kind of be like, okay, so now we can only find it really in a few places. That YouTube probably has an example of the film, I wouldn't doubt. So it would probably be, if you're not searching for the Kino, you can look for it online. I just meant a hard copy of it. There are hard copies of it. 12th Night, there are discs of 12th Night, yes. But the point of that is that Orson Welles' fame must go on because they still allow his really strange experimental films to play on a hard copy that's legal to buy. So it's not like any of this is like pirated or stolen or mugged or anything. It's just how he got through, and he had to do all that to get his films even through to the market, through to the picture, through to the screen, through to the audience. And it has to go in that order. It has to go through the market before it can get through to artists, or not the artist, but the audience. And the audience wants to see what the artist is, and however the market puts, as Orson Welles would say, straitjackets it, but as I would say, put a nice memory on it, make it go away. It's like Orson Welles was a look-back kind of guy in some ways, because he'd think back, wow, my independent films were the ones I made it with, and the further I go towards Hollywood, the more that I'm being buckled under. But this is actually the truth of it since 12th Night. Like, he hadn't had much, like, he had respect among, the office of movies and the office of Hollywood and the French offices. Those are the offices that take into account that they like movies that are assembled well, and it was like, if it was difficult to assemble, and there's a reason why, kind of, if it's for entertainment at all, or for the artistic prowess of an individual that would be in the audience upcoming, then these are the issues that are tied in to like some of the self-reflexive themes of Orson Welles. And now we get to the Mercury Theater on Air, and we had discussed that, and that's where he had done War of the Worlds. And War of the Worlds is really controversial because it's that apocalyptic finale where the spaceships are coming to destroy the Earth, and the aliens are already landed, and they're out shooting people with zap guns. And the point is that Orson Welles, when he did the Mercury Theater, he was trying to scare everyone with like a radio device. So he plugged in a radio device to the amplifier at his radio, and first was booming it out into the sound of the New York air, and nobody really heard it. But a couple of people did, and they thought, that's interesting. But when he boomed it out to the whole crowd, the whole crowd of Americans that were standing by the theater to hear him on the theater for the first time, because they liked his voice in whatever movies it might have been. Acting was another thing that went parallel to his career as a director. And you got to think after a while, it's expensive to act too. So directing and acting, you have to like pay the buy-in on both of them. Back then, even if you're independent, even if you're wealthy, that's a really trick of movies. And like, don't share these tricks with friends, because if you do, you'll make it think that I'm trying to do this show for popularity, and it is not. It is for academia. It is so I get my units in the classes I need, and so I can keep professing to you all the amazing things we learn about film. And I'm not saying that I'm the amazing thing you learn about film. No, 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 no. I teach you the amazing things to learn about film. And so that we're talking about the Mercury Theater, there's radio shows that can insert moments that are like kind of prove it's not propaganda by having regular commercials. And that there were regular commercials on the War of the Worlds out 1933 a broadcast. There probably were, but he did have to say, hold on, I've got to go to this, hold on, I've got to go to that. That was part of the theatricality of the DJ of that time, that he was DJing over a radio is one of the hard parts of us to learn about the story. Because that he was a DJ, he got on the air, kind of like, it's more like a radio personality, is a better way to put it. But he was putting on the show all of a sudden because the music that he was going to play didn't work. So now he's getting so into it that he's like caught into it, thinking this one thought that kind of gets him destroyed always, and that is, we'll make it seem as real as possible, and then we'll guzzle down on the fact that we're the only one that knows it's not real. I mean, isn't that the story of cinema? We've said that before. Like, it doesn't make it brand new cinema just because it's the same movie that came out, but on the other hand, it's always seen in a different way. And this can be heard in a different way, and you can say, some of us in our culture could say, how could you fall for that now? Or what more is there to fall for if that happened? But that the next day, they made him come on the radio station and apologize when a couple of people got shot thinking they were clubbing aliens and destroying aliens and zapping them out of mercy. And but they weren't. There was a whole thing. And then if there were aliens that landed, they must not have been at his booth. They must have been somewhere he could see them, because otherwise he'd be looking right out to see if the aliens were there, and they weren't. So he wasn't obviously doing this to create paranoia for himself, which creating paranoia for everyone else he knew could happen. And that's kind of one of the subversive things he does, is use propaganda to make people paranoid. Even the word propaganda can paranoid people. And not just because of where it comes from, but like everybody uses it in some small way. The social conditioned response, social response, or the conditioned response and all that. And it's like, okay, we can do that intentionally and convince there's aliens, but here's the really wild part. Orson Welles believed in aliens, and so do I. Now you could all laugh and say, well, that's so interesting, because if he was saying there could be an alien attack, well, he's off the hook. So he said there could be an alien attack and he was off the hook. But the thing is that Mercury Theater still kind of has this scar to its memory about how like it supposedly used propaganda to get people to realize that the end of the world was there, and whoosh, like a few people got hurt. There's a lot of things out there that are entertainment even, and that are artistic, that are like, can get people hurt. Like, I've seen movies, and I won't name any except these Orson Welles ones don't. They're not dangerous. They're not dangerous. You don't put them on and they explode. They convince you that something's going on in your mind that you've got to solve. Otherwise, you can't go to the next moment. And believe me, with all the film buffery that I've done, I've gotten scared at even like happy movies. You have to go to like the happy movies and get scared to really know what fear is. No, I'm kind of not true, but it kind of is true in this case, because you have War of the Worlds, this sort of entertaining like flock of spaceships coming down to Earth and blowing everything up, and then he is fighting aliens in the control room. Not exactly, but they're everywhere but the control room. And that's not really a cynical way to say it. That's kind of what he's saying to diffuse propaganda. And he's saying that, like, I'm going to never say that again, meaning it, thinking that the people were thinking I was entertaining. But we wonder if he really did know that he was making them paranoid and just, like, thrilled on it. And why is that unethical anyway? Don't DJs do that all the time? Like, isn't a really big DJ like someone that can come on there, give us a haunted story, get us all worked up, and if somebody gets killed, he doesn't have to apologize? I mean, I don't mean to be a jerk, but like if somebody gets killed because of somebody did on over the air, then they haven't been trained in how to uncondition a response that has anything to do with them. Like, once you learn that the movie doesn't have anything to do with you and where that notion ever came from, I'm not sure that it could deal with the director and everything, but there's hardly any movies that deal directly in someone that exists like you or you know, my students, they may have films made about them, right? That's not what I'm saying, but it's not the most accurate portrayal, and still they could say that film's not really about me, and technically it was more about the melodrama of the lifetime that the person lived. And that there are nonfiction films, you know, that we do get even with Orson Welles. The nonfiction is what got crossed with the fiction in this one, and so it's like now people are like still scared that aliens could land, but a lot of people now don't believe in aliens, and Orson Welles walks away, whether it's with a smile, whether he's pained from the whole experience, whether it was a slow start into Hollywood. It was a genius idea for the radio because it was absolutely fantastically put on. I mean, the way he was starting it all up with the battlefield Earth stuff and ending it with the day that the Earth stood still is one of those moments on theater done on radio that's just about the most amazing. And the fact that he used propaganda is fine because every other American did on the radio and before that. You got to learn there's bad kinds of propaganda. The bad kinds of propaganda are the ones that send you into battle with each other. You know, they're the ones that they're the bad propaganda. And who are we to judge it's bad propaganda? Isn't like something true in all propaganda? So we have to agree with part of it, you know, but we don't agree with the way that they would use it. Like, we don't mind if they use it to sell us jeans. That's cool. But like to sell us like freaking a paperclip that was worth billions of dollars, well, I'd probably see one like that someday. But, you know, I'd probably be the one to lose it. Have that and lose it, you know. So don't trust me with that. But you can still say that Orson Welles was doing something that he loves. He loves that it's controversial in a way, because otherwise he would have quit there because there was so much broadcast attention against him that it seemed like he'd blown it, but like he'd also kind of was laughing that people thought it was real. And, you know, does that really make him the reason those people died? I don't know. It's like we hear any song, and if it's the last song we hear, we all conspiratorialize it. And there might have been people fighting aliens anyway. Or like, you know, there might have been those undergrounders that got killed in the battle fighting aliens anyway. They took it upon themselves to fight the aliens, you know. It can be convincing. Like, how do we know? You know, so that it was fiction, broadcast as fiction, you can, because it's War of the Worlds, and that Wells. Sorry, the writer is H.G. Wells of War of the Worlds, and he does this really beautiful series of writings on the War of the Worlds, and then like they take it to the War of the Worlds movie now, and it's a very different thing. It's more close to how the H.G. Wells version is. This one's a lot more like Orson Welles' interpretation. That it was Orson Welles' interpretation. His had more of an apocalyptic notion, and ever since, that's been a marketing ploy of all apocalyptic films, is to use the end of the world and convince people it's coming to like sell the film. But guess what, everyone? It's the end of the world, and it's really coming, so I've got to sell a film. See, it's like, and I'm not saying they're doing it for just that, because it really is the end of the world. No, it really is. Like, the end is coming, like, in a few days. I mean, the sun can last another billion years, but the end of the world is coming. I don't know when, but you should grab all the gusto you got. And that was a little too far on that. No, I'm kidding. All right, Too Much Johnson. I don't know this one as much. We've seen this cover before. What do we got? And we'll have to click on it. We'll have to click on it. Okay, yeah. Too Much Johnson. A woman has two lovers. When one finds out about the other, he acts a villain and chases after the protagonist. This one we have seen up close, I think, before, but we've looked at this filmography one other time earlier in the years ago. And wow, this looks like it's that slapstick comedy where, yeah, it looks like that slapstick comedy. I've seen this. The guy comes in and he's looking for his different, like, sort of decorations he put up and everything and then he's looking for his shoes and for his jacket and for his, like, house key or whatever they had back then, a weird lock button. And then he's looking all around. And in 1938, there were some rising comedies, and RKO was settling the rising comedies. And so that Joseph Cotton is in this is brilliant. That he's looking for all this stuff, and then his wife comes in and says she packed it, she hid it, she's moving him out of there. And he's like trying to get it unpacked while she's repacking them, and they're kind of having this row the whole time. And the row the whole time is what creates the slapstick. And the slapstick is, in fact, what carries the film, but that it's an RKO, that it's a simpler film of RKO is not the point. By simpler, I mean one of the simpler than Citizen Kane. And they didn't know Citizen Kane was really coming up with that. But that his box office was really good in Too Much Johnson, and that it was this is all past the silent era, you've got to admit, and that Hearts of Age is silent, and Twelfth Night has a silent version. By this time, we're using audio in War of the Worlds. So now, Too Much Johnson, I don't think we need to go over too much, except for the kind of fact that it has this sort of whimsy that Orson Welles never has. Like, you want to sugarcoat a pill, Orson Welles won't. And he takes it, bitter consequence is just a consequence of consequence itself. So it doesn't matter to him if the whole thing, that's how he has kind of the attitude to make these kind of movies. It's like, we'll go out, we'll make the hardest movie there is to make, we'll make it really, really difficult, and no one will want to finish it, and we'll finish it. And he's not like pushing it as though it's hard in a bad way. It's like a struggle to get through it intentionally, and then it's a much more explainable attitude. Some directors do not work this way, or under the cumbersome pressure of taking things down but that's what this film is talking about. It's like she's packing him up because she doesn't agree with his ideas. He's packing her up then all of a sudden because he doesn't agree with her ideas, and they both leave with each other's bags. I mean, so now they're all said they're never going to get back together, and they're going to. And that's kind of one of those episodes of modernity. So we're moving on. We're going to skip The Green Goddess. Although I'd love to see it. I don't think I've seen that one. I'll have to mark that one down. And then Citizen Kane trailer, all right. We don't really want to look at that. We could, but I don't think so right now. We're Citizen Kane, we've talked about up and down. I didn't describe how the rosebud was an irony, about how you never know what it meant, because it could have meant the last word he said, or the last word he thought of, or the last word that someone gave him, or the last word that somebody heard him say. Or like that, all of it, that became the last word, and that it was a sled, but it burned down, and we don't know when he said the word. We've discussed in other film critical classes. And critical studies is really what we're doing with these classes. We're not like really always we only made like a production class in the sense that this master class is seen as special effects class. And that was the first summer after the film criticism 1 and 2. And it's on my masterclass video playlist on Aaron Sheley Masterclass, and you can see that on YouTube Masterclass, and you can see that all the old classes are saved, so people can still take them from the beginning, and people can go on with them and sort of get to hear and say, then how come it seems like we've heard the Citizen Kane thing before? And so I won't pressure you too much with that one. That one's a big one because the best years of our lives in Citizen Kane have a lot of these match-on actions that are coming from these deep focuses, that are coming from these like tracking shots that are like stable at the time that they're taken. And then it's like you get forced perspective out of different ways of setting up the deep focus. There's forced perspective, which is like where a line drawn of like an object goes into the frame, into the picture, and is sort of pushed in to look like it's bigger than it is or smaller than it is, or optical illusion. So... And we get all that. We get that there's optical illusions in Citizen Kane. We get that when the Rosebud thing happens, the globe shatters and you see him from the angle of the globe. That looks like the hardest shot to get. That Citizen Kane almost went down in flames so many times when they were making that movie. I mean, they walked off of it. They all left it several times while it was being made. They also got really mad at the director for not stating what he was really making the movie about, and he didn't really know, but he said he didn't have to know to make it good because he knew he delivered like some other good films, that they were good films. Now he's got to consider that he's got to make this one good. So I don't know exactly what happened after that, but somehow they all came back and he had carte blanche and he was like, all right, we're making it this way, the way we want, the way everybody can go, and there won't be any more follies. And on that particular one, there really weren't, because he had carte blanche, which means you get as much money as you want for making the film. And that's only happened like 2 or 3 times in history. I don't know where that's ever happened. I mean, you'd have to be an independent director to even pull that together. And to pull it together, the independent director will be doing things that other directors do not. That they wanted to try this Murnau technique, that Murnau had gotten Sunrise for carte blanche, are the only 2 examples I know of carte blanche. That I've heard some others were true to that. I'll let that be a secret. I'll let that be a secret to other directors, that yes, there was other carte blanche, but not announced all the way as carte blanche, which is the full carte blanche. And I'm not saying that makes it bad, because a lot of people keep that in private because they don't want to turn into, Orson Welles and go into hiding just because he made such a good War of the Worlds broadcast that now some people still think he deserves to die. So right away he's marked for death, And now he's really pushing on Citizen Kane, hiding and keeping the film scrolls able and not messed with. The fact that he hid by his projector stash of film was not his master copy of Citizen Kane was not touched by editing in the interim, and so that's one of the reasons it has the takes that it has at the beginning or end of the microphones that come down and say, "This is the Mercury Theater," boom, and the mic comes up. And you think that in Citizen Kane, he was really putting together this kind of RKO broadcast over the radio. They did radio too earlier in the 30s, and radio's a different medium. They broadcast all day long, all night long, unless they're off the air. And then you just like a TV, but like then it's like they come through in like a mysterious AM FM transition. There wasn't even AM FM back there. It was just radio, and it was like Radio Land. It was like these shows that were on the main grid of the radio that reached as far as all over America, and that they could have radio stations all over America, as they still do, and that the radio station he was at, he kind of took advantage of that whole idea that he's running the train. Like, he's running the train, and he's going to run it as far as he wants to go. And then that's what he said movies are, is like practicing with a train set that's a real train. Like, you just keep taking pictures, and then you get the moment, and then the moment becomes the idea, and then the idea becomes the enlightenment, and the enlightenment fades into its own kind of crass, but this is a melodrama movie about just a man who's tired of his financial stress, but he's already rich and he's already powerful, but he wants everything so he can be like the richest on earth. And it's got that whole subplot. It's not really like the idea that everything he touches turns to gold. It's not. It's like everything he worked for is there, and then he realizes he worked for so much more. And then he realizes a lot of the work he did was volunteered, and that's kind of nothing you want to do when you're in a position like him to become senator and then for president, but that you've served the servants, whatever. I disagree. I think that wasn't his real muster. The social inquiry of Orson Welles was all provoked by the fact that he wanted to make the social issue film, only in the sense that he was doing it as a favor to his liberal teachers at the Houseman Center, at the Theater Center, at the Shakespeare Center, at the plays. Like, there was a liberal sense among the Shakespeareans that were in Twelfth Night that he should get into social issues, and so we look at these films, though, and War of the Worlds really isn't a social issue. It's not really opening any other space but a critique for propaganda. But at the same time, it's the most interesting because we still hear that they do those in films today. They still do trailers that are going out that are still, your world's going to end. If you see the film or not, the world will end anyway. Is now the new thing. And you're like, well, that's okay, because what if I just tell you the world already ended and I brought us all back? I'm like, but that would be the difference between Orson Welles. He's not saying that he wants to disrupt the planet, but he is saying he's going to disrupt them. And he's going to interrupt them, and he's going to disrupt them in a good way. He's going to we got to break from your normal programming to show you this, And they didn't have boring programming on the radio. It was real exciting. It was real pumped. But Orson Welles' personality on the radio all came through the RKO thing. So now we're Citizen Kane. RKO paid for this whole thing. RKO made money on King Kong, pays for Kane. It's carte blanche because of the Murnau factor. And I think the film that made him carte blanche was Metropolis. And because they didn't have it, they were going to make Metropolis in Germany so much bigger, and then Murnau did the carte blanche with Sunrise in America at Fox Studios, and Orson Welles caught it in all of his film club screenings. Now, the next one is The Magnificent Ambersons. The Magnificent Ambersons we've gone over. It's where there's residents that are aristocracy that live in a mansion, residents of a mansion. They helped build the Model T car. They're the whole reason cars exist, and kind of, because they modeled it and made it to what it would be, even though it would have to go on an assembly line. Which an assembly line is kind of saying that it wasn't designed right there, but it still can be manufactured as parts, but manufactured as one whole thing was a difficult thing to do. And in the movie, they're trying to see if there's a way to manufacture the whole car itself. The vehicle, I should say, because some people don't like the word car. And it's funny, I've just been realizing that vehicle is the more classy way to say car, but that's because car is sounds so stop. It's like a car. Look, a car. It seems like it has to be stopped, or within our view. So vehicle's the real word to use. I'll have to apologize, but that they were talking about the invention of the car in Magnificent Ambersons, they were. They were using the word car in the movie. It's a car, I know it doesn't sound right, and I know no one says that really, but I'm not trying to break down something social of myself. I'm just saying I should say vehicle, even if it is a car, because there are cars and there are trucks. You don't have to distinguish that so much in a movie unless they're in a truck. So the real world is transportation device, and this is a kind of utopia. They're trying to build a transportation device that can get you around roads that will be built, and this is exciting. But they're all having a kind of a troubled winter because there's some cold going around, and also everybody had this big party, and they still always, it's like Citizen Kane. They always still they have all these things, and it almost feels like they have nothing. And the audience, no matter what class they're from, they're well, just get more things, or buy a better car, or there's better ways to do this. And that kind of pressure doesn't have any effect on them. It just seems like kind of an annoyance, or a contrivance for these are things for the aristocracy doesn't even tune into. And we can tune those out so easily, if they were, they can tune those things out. And I'm some of my kind of favorite films are the ones, especially cartoons, that are the ones that are base and dejected, but that Orson Welles wasn't really into the comic book style as much, but was, because even we'll see with Journey into Fear, that's kind of a Batman thing, but in a minute. But I don't really think he was into the comic book style in the same sense that everybody else was into it. I think he used it as kind of a poster, like a veneer, like a this person's got secret agent stuff to do or something in his film, even though he's just a simple man in the story. But in Citizen Kane, he's not a simple man. And that's what I'm saying. He uses these magic tricks to make us feel all the emotions that we never normally feel. And I think that's why there's been criticism against Citizen Kane, saying that it's too much feeds on the instinct of the characterization, too much feeds on the instinct of the audience, has no way to look through any mirror except its own, and yet we all see ourselves before it. And I don't necessarily disagree. I thought I wouldn't like get much out of it as a professor. I can say it's the religious experience of a lifetime, and that's not with religion in the picture. The real religion is gone. Cinema religion is here, and Citizen Kane has invented it. Like I don't think that there's anything I'd rather do than sit here and talk about film. And again, this is a warning to you all. If you're not taking a class, you don't have to. You're kind of recommended not to. So please, 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 if you don't like hearing about film and think it's boring and this is the part of what you want to shut down on, it doesn't matter. You can leave this post, defriend me from wherever you're getting the post from, and I'll be fucking fine. Because what I'm saying is, I don't think there's any reason that we have not to talk about film. And then those that are like, well, film is dying and film won't come back. I'm like, well, film didn't die and film won't come back. As long as like a train coming into the station is alive, film didn't die. And you can watch a lot of these films still, you know, and you can watch them on YouTube, and that they're old films. Will they ever get cycled? Well, some of these aren't even out like yet. Like Journey into Fear is out, but like it's hard to track down. And so we're gonna click on that one if we can. So if you don't like the class, I'm not mad that you don't like it, but instead of telling me that I erred by talking about film, you can in fact not watch it, or you don't have to watch it. I'm not banning anyone. Everybody can stay in class that's taking it. I just have to get a little incidental because we're dealing with film, and it's like there's so many consequences of dealing with film, like why haven't you dealt with this one instead of this one? Or like, why didn't you do something more entertaining for the class? Just because it's entertaining to me doesn't mean to them. And there could be a lot of problems with film classes that aren't full of people that are interested in cinema. And that's one of the elite things to say, like, we're interested only in cinema, so we only do cinema. Well, that's a good thing. But if they really need to do like an audience market test, then they will. But that's usually just for the sake of the viewers that like the film most and wanted to see it in every objective. And this gets kind of difficult to seeing like a film in every objective, like because you can't always get the VHS, you can't always get the Blu-ray or the 4K of these movies. This one I'm sure is on YouTube somewhere. But what do we got? An American ballistics expert in Turkey finds himself targeted by German agents. Safe passage home by ship is arranged for him. Pursuers are on board. Yeah, that's a really hard movie to get to see. It was on TCM that I saw it, and it's got Orson Welles in it and Joseph Cotton yet again, Dolores Del Rio, great cast. What I remember about this film, Journey into Fear, which I've only seen it like once or twice, and it was banned for the longest time, not because there was anything wrong with it, but because there was sort of this thing going around that, and it was also one of the ones that became The Stranger later in some of the shooting. Let me explain. Like, sometimes when you're shooting 3 movies at once, a scene for one film can go in another one, and it fits better. And people would say, oh, that's a bad idea. Only shoot the integral scenes that are going into your film, into my film. And I'm going, well, if he's got a shot I like and he wants to give it to me, then I'm going to take it. And I think that's the way Orson Welles was looking at his own work. And he's like, no, it isn't even anyone else doing it. It's me. I got like 4 films going, he's thinking in these times. He's like, I learned that you don't have to sentimentalize with Kane, but you can prattle around melodrama. And he's not trying to say that as a bad thing about Magnificent Ambersons, because that's got this burlesque, barrage of Baroque, you know. Magnificent Ambersons is Baroque all over the place. There's like the big chandeliers and everything, and the chandeliers are absolutely one of the best things about Magnificent Ambersons. The chandeliers are where they get those and how big they are and how they get those in the house and how they get that upward tilted shot, still getting everybody on the ground, still walking around. And so it's like at the party that the Magnificent Ambersons are throwing. So, Journey into Fear is the one where there seems to be some paranoia about why he needs to spy on someone or why he needs to go after him. And Dolores Del Rio is trying to say, in a very Mr. Arkadin kind of way, you know, we talked about that last time, is like, she's like explaining that like it's going to be their downfall, they're going to die. You know, there's always a portent and an omen in an Orson Welles film. Like, it's like the portent and omen and trade places, and they say, this suddenly just got introduced into the movie as going to happen, like the news on the march. But that it happens, we're still caught off guard because we knew the whole time it was going to happen, but sort of. But like we didn't, because just the suggestion of it in a movie doesn't mean it always happens later, which is strange because it almost always does. But some movies are out of sequence, and Citizen Kane is one of them because he keeps changing age all throughout. He's not changing age in like a biological way, like 13 to 50 all of a sudden. He's doing that by being an actor and getting makeup and looking like he's a kid and an adult at the same time, but not at the same scene, which would be kind of pointless unless you show up, or it would be like a project that you could do way in the future when you could make it look good. It's like one of those he probably gave up on, because in the future we can make movies where it's us as a little kid hanging out with us as an adult, that like it's not meant to be that silly, because Orson Welles has no sentiment now, and that he's blocking out sentiment, and that he's disaffected by his work, and that this is totally a spy movie just to freaking raunch everybody, just to say I can do a genre film. I can do a genre film, he says. And it's film noir. Now, we're going to take the last 10 minutes of class and discuss Orson Welles and film noir. I like how he tried to get through this filmography, because it's essential that many of you in this class, if you're taking the class, you should go look into the filmography, and you should see what it is that Orson Welles directed. And I knew the minute we started looking at the actual filmography again that we'd be like, okay, we're to Journey in the Fear. Now, the point of that is this film noir is something I've talked about all through Masterclass. You've seen film noir, develop from German Expressionism. That in German Expressionism, the lighting is off. It's low key. It's chiaroscuro. And it's that way in film noir, where the shadow is guarded by the shadow. The shadows of things and the person guarded in it. This is all a very Orson Welles concept, And he does take these kind of film noirs from the 40s and readjust them, but he's making film noir when it's popular. So that's what he's saying. He's saying, I'm making film noir the new genre, but it's not a genre, it's a style, because it's lighting and technique and form and consequence and rigid action and rigid directing and rigid acting. And there's all of these keys and cues as to how to look at how the film was directed, because he wanted to leave it in there to his films like a scrapbook of how he could look back and see how he made the films. That he never watched them, we don't know, probably not. It doesn't seem that he didn't see it when it went through the camera. No director really reveals that. I don't really know if he did say that Journey into Fear was his easy one to do or a hard one. He said, even though it seemed like an easy one to do, it was a hard one. But noir is a sort of dark alley of things that go wrong, and femme fatales, and legends of gangsterism, and people that are spies, and that they're all in this Fouillardian world, and it's this total darkness has descended, and someone is the menacing overlord in it, and they always bring down this crime boss, but that they bring down this crime boss that they're working for is really strange. I don't understand what that means, but that he's going to tell them that they have to take him down, even in Journey into Fear, is totally part of the film noir concept of it all. And that it's usually a guy, there's usually the femme fatale, so there's the man in distress and crisis. The man is in crisis at one point in the film. In film noir, he has to hide his shadow in the shadows, because then people will see his shadow and think he's in crisis. And then it'll look like a weakness that he has, which he doesn't. He just is in that, but he's not feeling emotional from it. So this too gives us a kind of a look at what film noir is. It says in a film noir book it says in film noir book by Andre Bazin that the reason film noir exists is because he gets into the close quadrant of the film, and then he gets into the far quadrant of the film, and then you're like, what is it supposed to be? Two shots that are glued together? And then he realizes he likes deep takes, likes long takes, sorry, and long takes will fill the frame out longer, obviously, and long takes will fill the action out longer. So if it's going longer, more things can happen in the one shot, but that he's now trying to tailor them somewhat to commercialism is still not totally what he's doing, because he actually got such a good deal from RKO that he worked for them continually, not really so he'd be like only the successful one, because remember, his success didn't come till later, but it was also to be the one that could push these film styles, and that film noir was going around back in the avant-garde period, and yes, it was. But you could even almost call Musketeers of Pig Alley, that one I use all the time about gangsters, by D.W. Griffith. It's sort of this like early setup for like what they're going to make gangster films look like, and gangster films are genres, and film noir is the genre that usually comes with it. It says it's dark now, it's night now, things are dreary, you need to go back to where you were, and then when you get back, if someone's there, love them or leave them, kill them or do them, but don't freaking leave a mess of bullets behind, because you just did. And then the mess of the bullets behind is going to have the police all over the scene, and the female confessing to them that they're wrong to think she did it, and nobody does think she did it, etc. It's like these, and that's the femme fatale, is like the destructive female that's really beautiful. She's really abiding, and she's really abiding in this kind of like shell of herself that's much more beautiful than she acts like she feels. Now, by acting, I mean there's an actor in the film, Dolores Del Rio, was probably fine, but that she gives these performances that she's in duress is a performance of acting that calls for it, because the script shows that she needs duress, or the director said you need to do this scene under duress. And it's not really funny to make fun of that, though, because it's like you have to get into that character to be that part. And if you're in film noir, a lot of these women that were in film noir would be like saying that like it was a scary part or something because I had to be distressed, And like Orson Welles would call for me to really be distressed. And then I'd really be distressed, and then everyone would be like, what's wrong? And this is typical. Not even Orson Welles invented that style. This is old acting style that goes back to the theater. And by typical, I don't mean everyone uses it. I really don't go around asking if anyone uses it, But the duress thing, so the woman that's in the femme fatale, she's like a beautiful lady, but she's like not like a fallen goddess like it could be, but it's like a goddess that never falls, but is still being shown that there are things that are causing her to fall, or like that she's about to, because this guy's in her life that needs somehow gangster it up, get some monies, rob a bank, and then he's going to still end up fighting with this sort of doppelganger, this sort of component to him, which is his partner, and like usually they backstab each other and things. This is the model of all film noir, like I'm telling you, and that Orson Welles is that kind of projection onto what film noir is like, and that I can't even tell you that like Orson Welles really conceived of these things under the influence that they had been done, but really it's hard to say if any of that had been done. I know with the radio it hadn't really happened that way, so I guess it had never been done. So we're just going to take into service that Hitchcock and Welles were the creators of film noir. Who agrees? Everyone, yeah. Because they showed a type of gangsterism that was like self-critical of its own businessman style, and then it's like you fall from the top, and while you fall from the top, you land near a woman. She also tries to kill you every day, but that she doesn't means that the whole story gets taken out on some old friend of his that betrayed him. And I think that's what really gets you into like film noir is the style, but the style of it is really what's more important than the content. So I'm going to go over it again really quick. Chiaroscuro lighting, dark lighting, almost no lighting, shadows fall in shadows, even in movement. If they're moving from one shadow to the next, you see the part of their shadow that goes between the shadows. Film noir is like in alleys. It's in trunks of cars. Up in weird textbooks. It's in the style looks like a really dark tale that's like almost done darker than it should on purpose. And I don't just mean dark by the type of story it is, but that's why I was naming the content, is because the content has to be dark to match the film noir or the neo-noir. And neo-noir is like modern noir, where it's like you kind of control it with a digital sweep of the camera. That way it looks like the shadows are really filling in. And that's the same kind of thing, but it's like neo-noir is not just the technological. Neo-noir is also the idea that you can still have revenge on someone in a noir film. You can still have it with all the old noir like things that go, tenets that go with it. All the other film noir like genre type things are gone, and all we have is film noir as like a style, and it's a style that accentuates the fear it's trying to promote. But notice, a movie that wasn't shot that way wouldn't produce that fear. So it is really the style controlling how we take the film. And it's not propaganda, it's more like stylistic enhancement. It's like they take the film and go back and make it look darker. Yeah. And the neo-noir is like, well, the plot is set there and the violence is a lot worse, and there's really shown sexual moments, which about old films, we don't know that some of them didn't do that and were edited. We don't know, but the point is that was a long time ago, so we really can't really meddle too much more. We can find better prints as restorationists and archivists, but we can't meddle too much more into what the film would have been when, unless we're doing a writing paper on it, which I'm not going to assign this semester. But if you're writing on the film and it seems like you have an interesting thing to say about it, do it. But if you're trying to charge the film for being different, now the only person that can do that is Roger Ebert, and he's not with us anymore. But he loved Orson Welles, and he loved his independence. And he said his maintenance for all the things were all good, but his journey into fear was the nightmare that I never had. It was the one movie I never got to see. It was the one thing that showed once on TV and was never blinded again. And now I'm going to kill it by owning the last copy and destroying it. He's saying this, whether he did or not, he would have been totally justified because he's him. That some critics can rise above the films of the Ancient of Days, like 150 years ago, and say those were the films that like defined me. Those were the films that like I love. And you can always say those, but like a real critic would be like, that was the film I had to take off the shelf in case anybody could ever see it again, because apparently he was so mad for not seeing it. That he got to see it is true, but that it's not a gimmick. It's true that it came back into circulation enough to sometimes show on YouTube is wild. And so Roger Ebert missed it, man. He missed the return to Journey into Fear. But that was a hard one to get because it was like a Netflix disc that you had to order like 12 weeks beforehand and get all this. I don't know. It might not be that hard now. But as I go and check out films, the ones that are obscure titles are even more obscure now, because now you go down all the lists and you're like, these are good movies, and I'm glad they're still here. But like, especially on IMDb, where they give him all their credit, even though he only had credit for I think Orson Welles had credit for 10 movies total. And we've talked about a lot more than 10 movies of his, 12 or 15, And so I'm going to leave you now with this picture in your mind that, remember, genres are what define a movie's characteristics and locations and acting costumes and the type of hairdo and everything, and the technical craft. Film noir is the technical craft that decides to go in with a loose one camera setup, usually, to capture and it's usually a one camera setup, but it's like a handled camera that you can move places, is one of the things of tracking shots that come into film noir. So I will tell you more about the details of that next week. But before we go, one last thing. Listen to War of the Worlds. It'll change your mind about the end of the world forever. Just kidding.